So typical. Hello, and welcome to Monster Hunter Marriage. My name is Gary, and I started this channel with my wife and two boys just about 2 months ago. And we cover everything to do with gaming, mostly consoles. And usually it's just gameplay, me playing with my boys, or me playing through games, or my wife doing so. But today, for the first time ever, we're doing something a little different. Doing a game review, or more like a mini review. This is a huge game and I'm not fully through it yet. That game is Xenoblade Chronicles 3. So please, before we get started, like and subscribe. We'll have much more content coming just like this in the future. And I look forward to seeing you around. Now, when it comes to Xenoblade Chronicles, I have a confession to make. I've never played a single second of any of the games. I could easily explain that away due to the fact that I haven't owned a single Nintendo console since the original NES.
No one calls it that.
That's my wife, Lex. She's the girl with the gall. So until the summer of 2021, I didn't own a single console from Nintendo, and that's when I got my first brand new Switch on Amazon, which arrived with a torn up box, an entire family's worth of profiles on it, and Dance Dance Revolution installed and ready to go. Based on the fact that the console was pre-owned and I paid over retail price for a new system, I'm pretty sure I got ripped off. But that's a story for another time. And while the gap in my Nintendo console ownership is entirely accurate, blaming that would be deceptive. Not 1 week passed after my definitely not new Switch arrived before I purchased the definitive edition of Xenoblade Chronicles. And after patiently checking online every day for months, I eventually came across a physical copy of the second entry listed at the game's initial retail price. Apparently that's a rarity by how often and how long I check for that thing. You see, I had read about how exceptional both games were and watched plenty of videos of people heaping praises upon each of them. Except for beat 'em ups and his exceptional disdain for Xenoblade Chronicles 2. All the while, I completely avoided spoilers. The fact of the matter is, I was just afraid to make the commitment. JRPGs are notorious for their length, and these games are notorious among JRPGs for their length. They're long. Add 2 crazy children and work to the equation, and I was far from sure of making the investment required to thoroughly enjoy these games. I kept kicking the can down the road, assuring myself that I would get to them soon. Well, soon turned to months, turned to years. But having recently started this channel with my family and seeing the announcement of the 3rd installment, I decided this was the perfect time to jump onto some Titan's back and see what all the fuss was about. I pre-ordered the game, picked up my copy on launch day, and began my journey. After roughly 20 hours or so with the game, I honestly have to say I'm disappointed. Disappointed with myself that I hadn't started the definitive edition when I first had the opportunity over a year ago. Though I am nowhere near the end of the game, or even the midpoint for that matter, I've sensed that I've stumbled upon something very special in Xenoblade Chronicles 3. And over the course of the next few minutes, or 20, I will endeavor to explain why I feel that this may end up being my favorite JRPG of all time when the dust settles in the wake of its conclusion. This is my early impression mini review, and I think it's very important for me to clarify once again that I'm only 20 hours in so far. I've noticed a trend on YouTube a trend in which many game reviewers, trying to be first and relevant, give their take on all of the aspects that encompass a particular game, and ending with their personal grade or score, they always sneak in a line or two that basically discredits the entire review. And it always goes a little something like this. Now, I'm only halfway through the tutorial at this point in time. This is then followed by the rest of the review without the awareness that this statement alone makes the whole thing more of a guess than a review. I mean, don't get me wrong. I understand the rush to get it up early, especially when you have a small little channel, such as myself, and are definitely not able to get an early review code. I still watch plenty of these channels, and I enjoy their reviews. But I also believe they are doing their viewers a disservice when providing scores and recommendations to games they haven't really played. I want to be totally upfront about my progress in Xenoblade Chronicles 3 before I begin to discuss it. Again, I've played for about 20 hours and am currently in Chapter 4. With that out of the way, let's talk about this game. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is imposing, hypnotic, mysterious, and unforgettable. I could probably keep going on for another hour. And it manages to be all of these things within a few hours of its runtime. I was genuinely shocked by how quickly it took a hold of me, especially when you consider its tremendous length. And from what I understand, that's 100 hours minimum. After just 2 hours, I was wholly invested in its premise, curious as to its antagonist's identity and motivations. I was sympathizing with our protagonist, and I was fixated on progressing its story to discover answers to questions I didn't have enough information to fully form yet. I feel I'd already received my money's worth. Graphically, the team at Monolith Soft proved they are masters at squeezing the juice out of Nintendo's little console that could, for all that it contains within it. The game is simply beautiful. It has this perfect style which blends like a soft and welcoming color palette with striking and distinct features, particularly the characters and the landscapes they find themselves traversing through. Their facial features, which, appear simple at first, become more and more impressive the greater the time you spend with them. And their hair is handled better than most next-gen games so far, to be honest. The environments and landscapes will definitely be the true showstoppers for most, and they're the reason I chose the word imposing to describe this game. They simply need to be seen for oneself to even believe the Switch can pull them off. Every single place you visit or stroll through is grand in appearance and vast. It has the effect of convincing you and the characters you control that you are ultimately just a cog in the machine, insignificant in the grand scheme of this world. Almost as if the land, or Titan body part, itself is an enemy to overcome. It will place you in a perpetual state of doublethink, knowing intuitively the cast you control have an irreplaceable role to play in the progression of this world, while also accepting that every hint and secret discovered slowly reveal that they are just actors on a stage, along for the ride that may ultimately never stray from the tracks. They may be the heroes the people of the world need, or the world may be creating heroes to continue the never-ending cycle of bloodshed and death it seemingly relies on. I've never been so unsure of my ultimate goal this deep into a game before, knowing only that I must reach a location, without an understanding of why or to what end. It's glorious. I'm obsessed with its mysterious nature. But, despite my heavy praise, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 left me unsure of it during its first hour. I was initially critical of its mixture of ignorant, single-minded characters and its surprisingly dark and horrifying themes. I was continuing solely for the combat and the stunning presentation. But honestly, I felt no connection to the characters and their complete lack of awareness as it relates to the serious nature of the conflict they found themselves engaged in. Then, the story progressed ever so slightly, and I came to realize how incorrect my initial assessment was. Not only were these elements intentional, but they are also brilliant. This world as it currently stands could not exist or continue to exist in any other way. I began to not only empathize with the game's protagonists, I began to like each and every one of them. This is a world comprised of two martial nations, Agnes and Kevis, engaged in constant conflict, but they're also stuck in a state of perpetual stalemate. No one's winning. In the introductory segment of the game, we witnessed the slaughter of an Agnes colony in battle, each individual's death feeding the lifeline of the rival faction in a zero-sum game of life and death. Like slaves, the troops are kept in a state of starvation, not for food, but for life. They are always desperate for their next meal, or in this case, their next chance to kill a rival soldier. We learn that regardless of how much life their personal clock holds, after 10 years of service to the Queen, a soldier's life force is forfeit and is returned to the Queen, though hardly anyone ever makes it to this point in time. The camera eventually transitions to one of the nation's queens, and we witness her grow a new legion of troops, hatched from their pods for a singular purpose: 10 years of war. The whole thing has a strong Brave New World vibe. That's what I was really getting, Aldous Huxley's classic, where people are grown and hatched in hatcheries. After seeing this, I understood the ignorance and cognitive dissonance our heroes display time and time again. They are intentionally kept in this state of mind, taught only the skills and duties of the class they were seemingly assigned to at birth, or hatched. Going off appearances alone, it seems they enter this world at the advanced age of about 10 to 12 years old, 16 by their second year, and they never seem to age any older than 20 over the course of their 10 years of life. They are surrounded by death from the start, and what good could possibly come from questioning or philosophizing about something they cannot change or escape from? The enemy is simply pointed out, and they are taught that their death brings them life. Giving up your life force to the Queen at the conclusion of your 10th term, their word for years, is the highest honor one can receive. Any deeper thought to this entire process is discouraged, and with the life they are forced to live, it's probably best avoided anyway. With this indoctrination, of course they're simple, straightforward individuals. Not to mention the fact that despite the advanced aging giving them the appearance of young adults, these people are children. That's when it dawns on you that these are child soldiers in every way that counts. This game is much darker than your typical JRPG, and it is better for it. Only Noah, our story's main protagonist, I probably should have mentioned that earlier, seems to be put off by this form of existence at first. But even still, he continues to go along with it, unflinching for the most part. It is only when they are forced into a different reality with a heavy push that our heroes begin to envision a different life for themselves. A life truly worth fighting for, but one they may never have the chance to obtain. Especially should some nefarious players who enter the stage at this exact moment succeed in their plan that is far from understood at this early point in the story. At the very moment Noah and the gang begin to question their reality, it really is a trash existence. They suddenly find themselves aligned with some they once called enemies, at odds with those they fought alongside their entire life, and at war with the entire system they are slowly breaking away from. To make matters worse, a new enemy has revealed itself that is beyond their understanding, who seem to be directing the events of the world safely behind the scenes, choosing precise moments to interject themselves, exclusively with devastating results. They are basically anti-guardian angels. Going only by the name Mobius, their motivations and nature are completely withheld from us. However, the initial agent they send to antagonize our heroes has got to be the coolest big bad guy design I've ever seen in video games. I'm pretty sure I was smiling from ear to ear for a solid 20 minutes. The setup to this game is perfect and leaves us with many more questions than answers. I'm not even sure I got a single answer actually. Being brand new to the Xenoblade Chronicles universe, I had no idea what to expect from the combat, other than the fact that it's turn-based. At first glance, it appeared not only standard for the genre, but really hands-off, as if you could run exclusively on autopilot if you preferred to do so. Thankfully, this is not the case. After the first half hour, you begin to see just how deep and strategic the system can be if you choose to engage with it, and quite frankly, you're really going to need to. Combat requires correct positioning to be most effective, certain attacks to be unleashed at precise moments, and in the correct order in conjunction with your fellow party members. It also demands accurate timing to get the most out of your attacks in the form of canceling attacks into arts. The whole thing is extremely addicting if you enjoy turn-based combat, to the point where I found myself with a desire I've pretty much never had in a JRPG. The desire to grind. I wanted to destroy every creature visible on my screen. I'm enjoying the combat so much. An urge I often have to resist, as I'm currently recording my initial playthrough for a long play video series. As much as people, and typically myself, hate grinding in games, I can only imagine it would be much worse to be subjected to watching someone else doing it. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 contains much of the quirkiness and oddities JRPGs are famous for, pertaining to its dialogue and voice acting. But that being said, it does about as good a job as I've seen a JRPG do with the words and phrases the characters say to each other and the tone in which their lines are delivered. When I was much younger, I used to believe these goofball characters and dialogue was to the detriment of the experience, something that needed to be overlooked to enjoy the games in the genre I was playing at the time. I've since come to accept it as part and parcel of this genre's charm and its uniqueness within the game industry. The voice acting itself is certainly not the greatest I've ever heard, but it's still rather good, with the actors voicing Noah, Lance, and Ethel being of particular note in the early stages, in my humble opinion. I'll make my segment discussing the sound effects short and sweet. They're excellent. Everything is timed well with the actions performed on screen, and not once have I thought anything sounded odd or out of place. Sound effects are kind of like offensive linemen in football. When you're not noticing or thinking about them too often, it's because they're doing their job properly. As for the music, it's the exact opposite. And you probably know that because it's been playing in the background this whole video. You cannot help but notice it constantly in this game. And that's because of how truly phenomenal it is. Every track I've heard so far has been of the highest quality, boasting an almost prescient-like quality, starting just the moment an environment seems to call for it, and matching its ambiance perfectly. The battle theme is the standout for me so far, and it's a good thing too, because you're going to be hearing it for very long periods of time. Many segments of it remind me of Monster Hunter World's music, which I believe to be very high praise. I freaking love Monster Hunter. At this point in the game, and as a first-time Xenoblade Chronicles player, I am completely blown away by this third entry. I play it as often as life allows, and I think about improving my strategy and guess at the upcoming story elements when I'm away from it. It has been quite some time since I've been this fixated on a game, and though it's still early, I have high hopes it will not only continue to hold this standard, but also build upon its current momentum. I am thrilled by the fact that I now have 3 games on a single handheld console set within this universe to experience for the first time. Better late than never, I suppose. Thank you so much for watching this review. Again, this is Monster Hunter Marriage. I'm Gary. Please, if you haven't already, like and subscribe to the channel for much more to come in the future. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great night.